They said monsters don't cry. But that morning, in the shadow of a rotting church, a girl who was called Nothing proved them all wrong. She wasn't supposed to be there, not in that town, not near that church, not with those flowers in her hand, wild prairie lilies picked from where only snakes dared bloom. She didn't wear morning black, she didn't own anything close to it, her dress was the color of dry wheat, fraying at the edges like a book too often opened and never finished, sleeves too short for the frostbitten air. Hair twisted into a knot that dared not unravel, her skin held a sunlit brown, just enough to be noticed and just enough to be whispered about. The townsfolk came in murmuring pairs, heels ticking like guilt against cobblestone. They spoke softly until they saw her. Then the venom came freely. "What's she doing here?" hissed Edna Cartwright, who never missed a sermon yet hadn't spoken to the girl's mother in a decade. "She's got no right in the house of the Lord," spat Hank Drummond, a man who never saw grace except when it was printed on a bottle. "She ain't even got a proper name," someone muttered behind cupped hands. "Just a cleaning woman's mistake and a father wow, you'll know." She heard it all, every word. Still, she didn't flinch, didn't move. Even as a brat snorted out an insulting mockery of a tribal war cry, she remained rooted. Then came a blockade Marla Creech, arms stretched wide like a sanctified scarecrow in front of the church doors. "You can turn around now, missy. This here's for family." "I am her family," the girl said. Her voice didn't tremble. "You are her regret," Marla snarled. Inside, the church flickered with the glow of oil lanterns, their flames casting nervous shadows on wood that had seen too many secrets. Reverend Barlow peered nervously through the window. He knew the girl's mother, everyone did. Alma had scrubbed this church for nearly 15 years, her knees worn raw on its floors. She never once asked to sit near the front, always in the back, always with dignity. Now her child wasn't even welcome in that sacred shadow. Barlow stepped outside. His face flickered with the kind of guilt usually reserved for courtroom confessions. "Child," he said, "there's no need for unrest. Your mother deserves a quiet goodbye." "She deserved respect," the girl answered, calm and clear, "and she never got that either." "If you wait," he fumbled, "after the sermon, I can offer a prayer." But she had already turned. She descended the church steps like royalty forgotten, her eyes never once seeking comfort in the eyes around her. Then came the rain knot, a tempest, just a soft, sorrowful drizzle. The lilies she held began to wilt, the petals slouching under the weight of water and unwelcome. No one called to her, no one stopped her, no one even knew her name. She was only that girl, or Alma's folly. Her mother never said much about her father, except that he was Lakota, fearless, and vanished into the dust to keep them safe. The town had a different version known with sharper edges. As she reached the edge of the cemetery, she paused. The church had denied her, but graves never judged. She stepped through the gate, knelt before a fresh mound of earth, and laid the wilting bouquet with hands that trembled. "I'm sorry, Mama," she whispered. "I tried." She stayed long after the drizzle faded, letting it rinse her face clean of all she wasn't allowed to feel. Far beyond the hills, past trails of regret and winds that forgot how to be kind, a lone rider cut through the fog, his name forgotten, but his vow still burning. By Monday, the mud had dried into dust. Dalton Hollow moved fast it always had. It didn't hold space for grief, only routine, only sameness. The girl tried the bakery first. "I can sweep, won't ask much," she offered. Clarissa Langford, queen of sourdough and side-eyes, looked at her like she'd tracked manure onto the tiles. "We already got help. I can work for less, just want something to do." Clarissa disappeared behind swinging doors, muttering about health codes. Next was the tailor shop. "My mother taught me to sew," she said. Mr. Barrington didn't even blink. "My clients prefer their clothes untouched by your kind." She nodded, though she didn't understand. At the schoolhouse, she joined the line of hopefuls. Miss Adeline Graft handed her a rag. "Scrub the far floorboard." She did, perfectly. But when her name reached the top of the list, Miss Graft scratched it off. "You're Alma's kid." The girl nodded. Position's been filled. No one met her eyes on the way out. At the general store, she passed 3 young men, Chuck, Byron, and Jed. They didn't know her name, never asked. "She tried to pray like she belongs," Chuck scoffed. "Maybe she thinks if she talks straight and stands tall, we'll forget she ain't one of us," Byron added. She stayed silent, reached for a bag of flour. "I heard her dad scalped 3 men before disappearing," Jed whispered. "That's not true," she said, voice soft. "Oh, she speaks now," Chuck smirked. "I said that's not true." His grin faded. He stepped close. Doesn't matter. Folks believe it, and that's all it takes. She left the flower behind. That night, she returned to the shed behind the graveyard, her home, if you could call it that. 4 boards and a tin roof, no windows, 1 cot, no firewood. Only memories, huddled in corners like ghosts with nowhere else to haunt. She sat on the floor, lit a candle, pulled out her mother's sewing kit, repaired her dress with hands that remembered. She hadn't eaten since Sunday. No food, no coin. But she didn't cry. Mama always said, she whispered aloud, "We don't beg, we endure." So she endured. The wind howled that night, clawing at the cracks in the walls. Somewhere far off, hooves beat against the earth slow, heavy, like thunder with a purpose. Nobody in Dalton Hollow noticed. But the dust was starting to rise. So was the past. Beyond the hills, where the land turned wild and laws grew thin, a man rekindled a fire beneath a starlit sky. He hadn't spoken his true name in over 2 decades, not since the day he vanished into myth. That night, as his horse snorted softly in the dark, something in the wind shifted an ache he hadn't felt in years. A memory stirred, a voice, a promise. He rose slowly, running scarred fingers along the edge of a weathered blade bound in crimson cloth. His voice rasped through the cold. Alma! He didn't need a map. He knew. It was time. The sun broke over Willow's Edge the next morning like nothing had changed. Roosters cried with the same old pride. Boots tapped across weary porches. Dresses dragged dust down wooden steps. Children carried buckets. Men cleared their throats into the wind. Women peeked through lace curtains pretending they weren't watching, but watching all the same. Still, something was wrong. The air had shifted. The breeze came from the highlands now, carried scents of pine smoke and forgotten things, memories hidden too deep for comfort. The dogs sensed it first, then the horses, and finally the boy sweeping outside the barber shop. Little Nate froze mid-stroke, broom angled awkward in the dust. A shadow emerged on the horizon, a lone rider cutting through morning haze like ink in water. Tall, hat tilted low, a coat heavy with silence. His horse moved like thunder in no hurry. No saddle creaked, no gear jangled, just hooves tapping out a ghost's rhythm. By the time he reached the town square, 10 sets of eyes tracked him from windows, corners, and stoops. The rider said nothing, didn't hitch his horse, didn't tip his hat, just stood. He wore no sheriff's star, no polished guns, but a blade hung at his hippets, hilt bound in worn red cloth, identical to the one Alma's daughter kept hidden beneath her cot. Some swore they'd seen his face long ago. Others whispered they'd dreamed of him in fevered sleep. Sheriff Delmore stepped out from the general store, puffing his chest like a rooster, unsure if it's morning. "Morning, stranger," he offered, chin high. The man didn't speak. "You just passing through?" the sheriff tried again. Still nothing. Delmore adjusted his belt, cleared his throat. "We ain't much for trouble in these parts." That's when the stranger looked up. Not a glare, not a threat. Just eyes that carried more history than most men survive. He lifted a gloved hand, pointed toward the edge of town. "She's still here?" he asked. His voice cracked like old wood soaked in whiskey. The sheriff blinked. "Who?" The man didn't answer, just waited. Realization crept into Delmore's face. "You mean the girl?" A beat, then a single nod. "She's around," Delmore murmured. "Lives by the cemetery, folks leave her be." The man's jaw tightened at those last words. He mounted his horse again without another syllable and rode off like punctuation to a question nobody wanted to answer. Chuck and Byron watched from the mercantile porch. "You think he's law?" Byron whispered. "Nah," Chuck said. "Look at that blade. He ain't no badge man. He's tribal." "Then why now?" No one knew. Down by the graveyard, Mika was pinning a torn sheet to a sagging clothesline of 2 dresses and a ghost of fabric could be called laundry. Her hands were raw from soap and cold water, her face hollow from hunger. She heard the horse first, looked up slow. The rider dismounted without a word. He didn't ask who she was, didn't need to. Her eyes fell to the red cloth on his belt. "You knew her," she said softly. He nodded. "You knew my mother." His gaze wandered past her to the crooked wooden cross behind the shack. "I made a promise," he said, and for the first time since Alma's death, the wind in Willow's Edge carried something heavier than gossip. It carried a name and a reckoning. They sat outside the town's only diner, more of a memory than a business. The table between them groaned beneath the years, its legs uneven and paint long peeled away. Sunlight hadn't yet dared to warm the rooftops, but she could feel every curtain twitch, every breath held. The town was listening. He placed a dented tin cup before her. Steam curled into the morning. "I didn't ask for anything," she said. "I know." She eyed the dark liquid warily, then looked up at him. His face was carved in hard lines, like a cliff shaped by wind and silence. Eyes deep as night, unreadable, but not cruel. "Why are you here?" she asked. He sipped the coffee like it was an old friend. "Because I should have come sooner. You left before I was born. I didn't forget." Her jaw tightened. "They said you didn't care. They lied." She laughed cold, bitter. "That's what people do best here." He set the cup down, gentle, like it carried more than coffee. "I knew your mother before they buried her name, when she laughed like spring and loved without fear. I left because staying meant burning her alive." "She burned anyway," Mika whispered. He closed his eyes. "I know." Silence swelled around them like a storm gathering in the bones. "Why now?" she asked. He didn't rush the answer. Instead, he reached inside his coat, pulled out a cloth bundle, like the one at his belt. He unwrapped it. Inside lay a photograph, faded, cracked, a young woman cradling a baby beneath a jagged mountain. "That's you," he said. "She never showed me this. She never had the chance. I sent it, through someone I trusted. Maybe it never made it." Her fingers trembled, tracing the smile on the woman's face. "She used to hum at night," she whispered, "when she thought I was asleep. She was holding on to hope." The word hit like a thrown stone. They sat in that shared ache to silhouettes the town had already buried in rumor. "She's gone," Mika said at last. "But they still talk. They still pretend she never existed." "And you?" he asked. "They call me a mistake." "You're not." She looked away. "I made her a promise. If she ever passed, I'd come for you, no matter how long it took. You don't owe me. This isn't about debt, it's about right." A fly buzzed lazily. A dog barked down the lane, then fell silent. "I don't need saving," she said finally. "I'm not here to save you," he replied. "I'm here so you don't have to fight alone." Tears welled, but she blinked them away. "It's too late." "No," he said, rising. "It's just late enough." He walked off toward the livery, leaving behind only the photographer and the warmth of coffee between them, proof someone still remembered Alma's name. The days that followed weren't loud. Real change never is. He didn't ask for a room. He didn't make noise. He simply stayed. He didn't sleep at the inn, didn't ask for a bed or a room. Just found a spot in the old saloon barn, dropped his saddle in the hay, and rested the way a man does when he spent most of his life in the company of ghosts. He never followed her, never pressed, just waited. She found herself passing by that barn more often than reason demanded, pretending she was headed elsewhere. Sometimes he was tending his knife, other times brushing trail dust off his coat. But mostly, he just sat silent like a man tuned into a frequency only the wind could carry. On the fourth morning, she brought him bread. He didn't smile, just gave a nod. "Sit." They sat in the doorway, where the morning light broke through the slats like stained glass from heaven's broken window. "Ever taken a life?" she asked, eyes locked forward. "Yes." "Because they were white?" "Number." She waited, but he didn't elaborate, just tore off a piece of bread like the truth was something to be chewed slowly. "Did you love her?" His answer came without pause. "More than breath." "Then why leave?" "They gave me a choice, leave or be buried here." "So you chose yourself?" "I chose her." That made her turn, confused. "If you'd stayed, they would have killed you?" "They would have killed her too. Then you'd never have been born." She said nothing. He exhaled slowly. "We made a pact. If she passed before me, I'd come back, finish what we started." "What was that?" "To make sure you were never erased." His words hit like truth always does, quiet but deadly. She pulled out the worn photograph again, studied it. "Why didn't she go with you?" "She wouldn't leave. Her mother's bones were in this soil. She said her hands were made for this land. They punished her for that. They always do," she whispered. Then, almost afraid to ask, she turned to him again. "What was her name to you?" He didn't blink. Salvation. That night, he walked the streets of Willow's Edge, retracing steps that hadn't been taken in 20 years. At the saloon, Conversation stopped mid-sip. Inside, Clay leaned toward Earl. I don't like him here. He hasn't done anything. Not yet. At the churchyard, the man stood before Alma's grave. No stone, just a wooden cross worn thin by wind and silence. He knelt, whispered to the dirt. You were right. I should have come back, but I'm here now. Then he did something no one saw, pressed his forehead to the earth like it was holy. The town grew restless. Not loudly, Willow's Edge wasn't a loud place, but in ways that made shutters close earlier, rifles get oiled quietly, and hearts brace for what might come. The man never raised his voice, never threatened, just kept showing up. One day he repaired the chapel's busted water pump. Another, he helped old Traeger fix a wagon wheel, even though the old man never thanked him. Then came the day he saved a calf from drowning in a ditch. The rancher walked away, silent but ashamed. The people noticed. From behind curtains, from dusty windows, from pews they hadn't dared clean since Easter. And every time he passed with those boots that whispered instead of stomped, they remembered something uncomfortable. Debt, not the kind owed in coin, but the kind buried under silence. Mikano, Estella, began walking taller, not out of pride, but something gentler, dignity. She still wore the same faded dress, still bore the name she'd carried in whispers. But now, people didn't bump her shoulder in passing. They crossed the street for her. Mrs. Langford began offering her day-old rolls without comment. Mr. Brodie let her mend, Hemsend paid her. Sheriff Delmore tipped his hat without mumbling first. But not everyone welcomed change. Inside the saloon, Clay slammed down his whiskey. We just gonna let this happen? Earl shrugged. He ain't broken a single law. He's fixing things, smiling at her like she belongs. She don't, Timothy muttered. She's worse, Clay hissed. She's the reminder of everything we buried and hoped stayed dead. In her shack, Estella lit a lantern. It flickered brighter than it should have. She kept the red cloth wrapped gently around her wrist, a shield against silence. The photograph lived beside her bed. He knocked once on the doorframe. I fixed the back fence, might keep coyotes out. She turned, surprised. I'll be around, he said, then paused. Unless you don't want me to be. They're scared of you. I know. They don't forget. Neither do I. She didn't look at the scars or the blade. She looked at him, the man who had walked into fire just by returning. And for the first time in her life, she said the word she never dared speak aloud. Father. He didn't react. Not with surprise, not with tears, just presence. Yes. No hug, no dramatic music, just stillness and love. Outside, the wind pushed against windows like a warning. Willow's Edge didn't burn often, but when it did, it burned slow. That night, fire climbed the sky. The old church went up like it had been waiting for years to be set free. Not lightning, not accident. Someone had waited until the town slept. The steeple caught first. The bell swayed, groaned, screamed. By the time the sheriff got there, breathless and barefoot, the roof was gone. People gathered in stunned silence. No one carried water. No one moved. Until she ran in barefoot from the hill, dress flapping like wings. She didn't scream. She ran. Someone tried to stop her. She shook them off. Inside, fire clawed at every wall. She dropped low, crawled through smoke, found the altar cloth half burning. She beat it out with her hands. Found the cross, the hymnal. Just as the ceiling cracked, he was there. No one saw where he came from, just that suddenly he was. He kicked open the back door and vanished into the blaze. Seconds passed, then minutes, and then they came out. He carried her in his arms, dress charred, soot on her face, cross still in her hands. The town parted. She stood, shaking but proud. The Reverend stepped forward, voice trembling. She risked her life for this. She risked it, the man said, for what you forgot. And the Reverend knelt. Forgive us. We forgot who showed us grace. Estella didn't speak, just stood taller. That morning, the church was ash. But maybe, just maybe, the town found its soul. By noon, folks returned, not to gawk, but to rebuild. Langford brought water, Brodie brought wood, even the sheriff picked up a hammer. At the edge of the lot, Estella stood beside her father. Burned hands wrapped in soft cloth, eyes steady. No one ordered her away. Mrs. Langford approached slowly. Would you help sew a new altar cloth? Estella blinked, then nodded, yes, ma'am. By evening, she sat beside the women who once turned their backs, needle in hand, and though no one said it out loud, they knew she had walked into fire for them. Later, the sheriff approached. I saw what you did. She said nothing. Your mother was a good woman. She was the best part of this town. He nodded. If you ever need anything, I'll let you know. From that day, her name was no longer whispered, it was spoken. Estella Lucistrella. A name once whispered at night now echoed proudly across the square. Children shouted it, women called it, even the sheriff tipped his hat. But she saw it to her father, gently pulling away. He rode out farther each day. Then, one morning, he was gone. No goodbye, only the red cloth tied to her door, and beneath it a letter weighed down by a river stone. You are no longer the girl who walks alone. You are the star that rose from ashes. Walk proud, Estella. If ever they try to take your name again, know someone out there remembers. Someone always will. No signature, but she knew. Later that day, the townspeople gathered. The Reverend unveiled a small wooden plaque in honor of Estella, who walked into fire with grace, who taught us courage and gave us back our faith. She didn't cry, just smiled and nodded. That evening, Estella climbed the hill barefoot. At her mother's grave knoll marked by a stone, not a stick, she knelt. They say my name now, she whispered. Yours too. She tied the red cloth around the cross. The wind picked up, and the bell rang once, strong and clear. Far beyond the ridge, a lone rider moved into dusk. Didn't look back. Didn't need to. He had come not to be remembered, but to remember her. If this story moved you, tell us in the comments who was the one person who made you feel seen when no one else did. For more stories that deserve to be heard, follow or subscribe the channel.